Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Quad and the CSL. It is Friday, the 23rd of February. It is another beautiful time of year because we bring back one of the most lively and stable games of our industry with the StarCraft 2 edition of the Quad. Got a wonderful little guest group with me today. Joining us, at least to my right, we have Mr. Powerfo, aka Liang, aka the person that has been just reading endless forfeit results on Brood War, just slowly losing his grip and faith in the StarCraft Brood War community. But StarCraft 2 has been pretty good, though, right, this year? Pretty stable, right? Overall, would you say?
Yeah, we had like two teams drop out, and then after that, every team has made every single match. So other than those two guys that have given up, everyone else is doing pretty well.
That's actually a ridiculous percentage, like compared to like League and like Dota 2 and CSGO, like on a yearly basis. That's actually like one of the most, to me, fascinating things that like StarCraft 2 people like in a game that's typically a lot more isolated than say, you know, obviously any other MOBA or team game or shooter, whatever you want to, you know, whatever category you want to throw in there. It's cool that SC2 is the one that's like some of the most stable ground that we have so far. But joining me below, we got Mr. Pancakes from the University of Chicago, but recently transferred to University of Illinois via Twitter, apparently. How are you doing today?
Doing well.
I saw you in Garage Door playing some customs. I was trying to grab somebody for the show fill in. What were you guys doing? Was it just practice or just fun customs, or what were you guys up to?
Yeah, pretty much just fun customs.
Dope. And then to my diagonal bottom right, representing the Longhorns. Throw them up, boys. We got Sanguine, also a veteran player of the SC2 variety. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
What is up with the hidden identity? I have to ask. Do you have enemies like in StarCraft 2 that you've just like gotten you just like offended with Protoss players or something like that they just want to come after you?
No, it's just I troll a lot, so I definitely want to keep my identity to myself. So
a dangerous man on the SC2 client. You got to watch out for him. Obviously, we're wondering how's overtime going, Powerfo? We see you looking back, and I'm honestly
the game's over. I'm gonna turn it off.
I'm genuinely curious myself as well to find out the score. Obviously, there's a lot of us that are.
All right.
There's genuinely a lot of us that are like cross sports fans as well on the side. What was the final score? Did Toronto make it out, or did the Bucks get it?
No, it's like 120, 119, but they might have fouled, so it might be a bit more, but it's over.
Damn shame. Raptors are actually really fun. Last time I saw them not too long ago when they came by through Denver. Really fun team to watch. Really athletic, and so
the Denver game was the worst game of the season for the Raptors. They got smashed by like 30 points.
True, but they are a fun team to watch, though. Like, really athletic. DeRozan, you got Lowry, you got, what was it, Valanciunas, right? I can't ever pronounce his damn name. But yeah, fun group there as well. So yeah, we got a lot of crossover into the sports world. But today we're going to be talking about StarCraft 2 and its inaugural, God, what would it be now? Technically, since 2009, so it would be its 8th year. Actually, since 2010. Sorry, since 2010. So it would be it's technically in its full 7th year, which is actually ridiculous to think about. Not only just for a game, but for a collegiate league as well. We're gonna kick things off looking at the spring standings. For those that are not familiar, you guys can head over to cstarleague.com/SC2, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, /SC2, and click on the fall division if you guys want to follow along with us. We're just going to be looking really quick at some of the results and want to get some of your guys' thoughts on the fall final standings that we had. And so hopefully, if everything works, pulled up the fall standings right now for you guys to check out. We had total of what this year was it?
21 teams.
Originally
21 down to 19.
Down to 19. I was about to say, I couldn't remember if it was 19 or 18. So we have 4 conferences. We had the East, the North, the Midwest, and the West Conference. And we'll start off with the East. We had UConn finishing at 4-1, Temple at 4-1, RPI at 3-2, Georgia Tech at 3-2, RIT, who I think is one of the dropouts, right? At the end.
Yeah, they gave up. They gave up after they realized they were playing a guy who already graduated, and then they're like, "Oh, we can't do that," and then they just dropped him.
Does happen. It does happen on occasion. And then they had Florida at 0-5 finishing up. Surprisingly enough, Temple actually did take an L. Actually, where did they take an L? No, oh, sorry. I just pulled up the spring division. I want to see. They took a loss to Georgia Tech 2-3 in a week.
Yeah, and that was because Tesla slept in at 3 p.m., so you couldn't get up for that such an early time, so they dropped.
Slept in for a 3 p.m.
Yep.
what a life. Just oops, sorry. Slept in for a 3 p.m. Jeez, sorry. Phone decided to perk up. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Obviously, do we think that if Tesla did not sleep in, that might have been a win the other way around for Temple, most likely against Georgia Tech, right?
Yeah, for sure. And even then, they had Suppy in the ace match, and then he kind of just lost, and that's kind of an upset already. They still should have won without Tesla, but didn't turn out that way.
Gotcha. Any thoughts, guys, on Temple, I guess, and just kind of just generally UConn as well, being in the East at the top side of it?
Yeah, that group in the fall was a pretty tough group. You can see Georgia Tech and RPI finishing 3rd and 4th, and then if you go to the current standings, those two teams are both 1st place. So it just shows how the groups can be lopsided at certain times just because of the process that the long hair guy goes through when he makes them. So.
The long hair guy. That's a name that's got to catch on. I love it every time I hear it. That's just really funny. For those who don't know, that's our head tournament admin, Alan. The unthankful job, as you guys would call it, of tournament adminning. But overall, I think for a fall group, that was a pretty stacked group, I would say. I mean, to have Temple, to have UConn, to have Georgia Tech, to have RPI, RIT if they actually played fully through it, and Florida, who's in an off year, that's a pretty stacked group for a fall side, I would say, right? Especially with how SC2 is. I don't know, like, what are your guys' thoughts on some of the strongest groups right now? At least, or who was the strongest group on the fall side?
No, it was that group. So let's move on.
It was we got guests here. Let's be polite. What are your guys' thoughts as well? You want to hop in here? Pancakes? Anybody? Sanguine?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Yeah, Temple certainly seems very scary. They have they have two of the very best players, and I was glad that we didn't come in 4th, so we don't have to worry about playing them in the first round of the playoffs. Although we can talk about that later.
Looking at it, at least based off of the standings, is there any surprises out of the East group in terms of finishing spots? We had RPI finishing at 3-2, Georgia Tech at 3-2. Georgia Tech, I think, reacquired this year. Their main acquisition was Theory. He's doing grad school for Georgia Tech, so he at some point not only was a GM level Protoss, but a GM level like random player. Obviously, you could correct me like at some point down the line on Twitter, but I'm pretty sure he's there. You have good leadership and having guys like Plumorant who have been there around quite a while. You got the Cube boys as well on Georgia Tech. Is this a team that is going to be probably competing and doing really well in playoffs this year down the line? Sanguine, any thoughts on Georgia Tech? You guys actually used to play them, I feel like, quite a bit on a yearly basis.
Yeah, these are names that I've heard of even before I participated in CSL. Like Theory, Zuppy.
Yeah, how we ever allowed Suppy to come back this year under those circumstances? I will forever not understand.
Yeah, and also RPI's Jon Snow. Like these are like very, very, very like good players. Probably gonna be very one-sided. Whoever gets matched to them. Just very, very strong group.
How do we look at you? How do you guys look at UConn as well as a team? They got Rookwood, H-Jacks, obviously Print F, one of the really most dangerous players in the CSL in my opinion, and Turkey Dano, a very small 4-man roster. but a team that got really deep last year as well in the tournament, and they're looking to pretty much do the same. In the spring side, which we'll talk about a little bit, obviously they faced Waterloo, so we might have some stronger opinions on this, but on the fall side, they looked to do pretty well up until the point where they hit Temple, where they lost a close one 2-3, and that was to Suppy at the end of the day, which does happen. I mean, Temple has basically a couple ace players, level snipers that they could use if they won at any point, but it's just interesting that Print F wasn't the player that was chosen to play that ace match either. HJax was the one that played for him. Could that maybe gone the other way if it was Print F versus Suppy? I don't know. What do you guys think for like terms like level of player? Has anybody else played against Print F, by the way?
No,
that's like actually absolute torture. Like if you
I haven't played him in CSL, but I've played him a few times on ladder recently, and last time I played him, I tried some kind of like proxy. I tried to wall in and then go proxy Void Ray, and I think I also got a defensive forge and built my own cannon, and it actually worked pretty well. But then I messed up the micro and lost. But
it's a tough opponent. Like I've faced him. Like obviously I don't hit him in the CSL matches because I'm not in it. But like on ladder, like it's like absolute torture. You see that portrait and that name come up, and you're just like, well, time to like just basically zone out my whole natural like for anything that's going to be coming in or my main high ground. The hope to dear God that he's not going to be able to do the typical little proxy robo or like proxy cannon gate like shield battery shenanigans. It's always hilarious to watch on a weekly basis. Could we see this as potentially like they obviously split up in the spring side of things, but could UConn, Temple, and Georgia Tech be teams that could go deep into the playoffs potentially? At the end of the day, maybe at least a couple of them into the finals. And any thoughts on the level of talent? Obviously, Temple might be spoken for, but is somebody like UConn as well as somebody that could go deeper, or Georgia Tech?
Yeah,
UConn's...
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I think any of these schools that have this one outstanding player, they're just gonna go in the match basically given a one win. So I think they have huge advantage over other players and other teams in the playoffs. I think they'll probably go deep into the playoffs quite easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
I guess like it seems like UConn like is really dependent on what kind of the lineup of the other team they hit and what races they have. I mean, if they hit a team with a lot of Terran, it's going to be harder to cannon rush, and I think we saw that with Waterloo.
Possibly. I could see that definitely happening. Looking at the other fall groups that we got going on, I'll bring that back to the screen right now. We got the North, where Waterloo finished 4-0. They had Michigan State 3-1, Ontario Tech at 2-2, Simon Fraser at 1-3, and McMaster at 0-4. Obviously, I want to say this could possibly be one of the weaker groups, maybe, in the CSL, just by like standings of teams alone. You have SFU, who's kind of building up a program. Michigan State, who's coming back, I think, for their second year now, doing a bit better. Ontario Tech as well, kind of one of the middle of the road teams. The surprise is actually McMaster going 0-4 for me. Was the results of this group like any surprise at all? Like, well, I feel like Waterloo came into the fall as like a heavy favorite in this group.
Well, I would have expected University of Ontario to do a bit better because they have a lot of Master League players, but for some reason or another, they keep underperforming. This entire year, they've been underperforming, even after they got their best player back from his work term. They got Jason back this spring. But even then, like, they still haven't performed towards my expectations, so that's pretty disappointing. But yeah, obviously Waterloo is one of the best teams, and they're probably the favorites to win this entire tournament, I would say. Yep.
Fair. Based off of how Waterloo's played, that is a fair statement. It's not just powerful being a homebody right there for the home team technically. Do you guys have any thoughts on the North group? Because we're about to get to your guys' group, which is gonna be fun. Have you guys had a chance? Has anybody played Waterloo outside of anything CSL related or the players that they faced?
We did play them in Waterloo, or we played Waterloo in the spring season.
Gotcha. We'll hold that off once we get over to spring then. The Midwest for the fall side, we had Washington, Chicago, UT Austin, Illinois, and Southern Illinois. Washington finishing atop at 4-0. We were not able to get Garage Door over here. He pawned off the responsibility of talk shows over to Pancakes, as you see. So we can't get his comment on it. But how's the fall for you guys? You guys obviously played each other. What are your guys' thoughts on your group back in the fall? Either of you could go ahead. Feel free.
It was just very, very tough for us at UT Austin versus any of these teams. So it was. I felt like it was kind of more luck than skill because it depends on who is playing who. Mm-hmm. Since every team is so balanced, so they have like one or two like really good players, and then they have one or two not so great players. So it depends on like who's matched with who. And I think that factored into the results a lot.
Well, the interesting thing here, I'm pulling up the fall result between Chicago and Texas. There goes a player by the name of Trevor Moore Protoss that took on and beat a Terran named Sanguine. If I'm not mistaken, looking at the stats and results page. For those who don't know, Sanguine is Sanguine, aka Red Velvet, all your like 10,000 names, and Trevor Moore is Pancakes. So, do you guys remember that fall match by any chance that you guys played against each other?
A little bit.
I don't really remember it, but I always get wrecked on CSL matches.
Is it the pressure or what is it? Is it just?
I guess so. Like I also like overthink myself. Like I overthink like every situation. I overread the situation, so I mind game myself, and I kind of like screw up.
Just like one of those situations. Say like you have a lead, but you just for some reason feel like you need to do something extra instead of just continuing to like grapple those type of things.
Like for example, if I'm playing a Protoss and then I SCV scout and then I don't see a Nexus, so like I'm thinking, oh my god, this guy's gonna like all in me or proxy Stargate me or something, and then it just turns out that he's just going Cybercore first. Mm-hmm. Or like versus Zerg when like I send SCV scout and then I don't. And then I trick myself into thinking that it's a pool first, but then it's actually just a normal hatch first pool. So like some of these things that I misread and like overthink myself and kind of like just put myself at a disadvantage like all by myself. So.
I completely understand it. At some point in time, I used to be a CSL player, like back in 2011 and 2012, so I know exactly what you mean. I originally started with 2v2. I was like one of our 2v2 snipers, and then the following year I ended up moving over to 1v1, and like the 1v1 especially is like that much more stressful because you're just you want to win, you want to perform, you want to get the W for your team, and it's just one of those things like until you get used to it or like get your nerves around it, you just tend to like overthink and make mistakes, exactly like you mentioned. What about you, Pancakes? Any fond memories of the fall? Ended up beating Sanguine.
I don't know. I guess I don't remember that much about that game specifically. I remember more like I think there were some games against other teams where I got all in and just kind of. I mean. I kind of relate to that kind of panic.
The loss is sticking harder with you than the wins.
Yeah, and like I think it's UIUC, like that match was on stream, and I got roach rushed, and Yeah, and I just like I didn't have a very good wall, and like Warp Gate got denied, and
See,
yeah.
see, people think like people don't understand like one StarCraft 2 how hard of a game it is, and then two like the stress that goes into playing like an official match, even at the collegiate level. Like the nerves do kick in. The nerves do kick in, and then when you're on stream, it's like now I got to perform for people now too as well, not just the team. So yeah, I feel you guys. I feel you. I've been there before. So at the end of the day, Washington did end up finishing at 4-0, Chicago at 2-2, UT Austin at 2-2, Illinois at 2-2. So a bit of a cannibalistic group, kind of ate each other alive, and then Southern Illinois, was that the other one that dropped out?
Nope, they're still in it.
They're
I think
still
they made
in
the
it.
playoffs actually.
Who's the one? Was it
Impressive.
who dropped out? Was it McMaster then?
McMaster and RIT.
McMaster and RIT. Okay, sorry, Southern Illinois. That was like a really that was almost insult worthy. I apologize for for that. Sorry, you guys just had a rough. You guys had a rough fall portion of the season. All right, to top it off, we have the Western Conference. And that includes UC San Diego, UC Riverside, UCLA, UC Berkeley, and UCI. Interesting group. One, of course, being I'm a little bit surprised that San Diego actually finished at 4-0. When they've got a group as talented, especially with like a UC Berkeley with their team, they got a nice little roster of. They got Iron Piggy. They got Cloak's a GM player, right? Or is
No, he's Lowmaster.
or is it Light? Is it Light?
Light is in GM.
Light is in GN. Dragon God Longs is as well, right? I'm pretty sure. So they do have, I guess, some firepower on their team, but they completely wiped their group 3-0, 3-2, 3-1, and 3-2. And interesting enough, those 3-2s, who did they put as their... It looks like Longs has been their sniper player for the ace match as well. Does anybody know a lot about Longzus? Anybody face him on ladder or, fairly familiar with him?
Yeah, he's a freshman Chinese guy who came from China to UC San Diego, and I guess he mostly plays on like the Korean server, so he's not really well known to most North American people.
Because I almost confused him because George Washington, I feel like, had a player with almost like a literal similar name tag, and for a second I almost thought it was him, but he's definitely a different player and a new one that we haven't seen. So this could be maybe a future star of the CSL. He's doing pretty well. He hasn't taken many losses over the season. I think only one loss overall, if I last checked my stats, but. Yeah, obviously there's also that advantage of being in California. That ping difference to Korea is much, much different than when you're, in the Midwest or out east, or generally if you're out in Canada. That ping is just not great for you to utilize.
Well, it's also that I think before last year he was actually living in China, so in that case, playing on Korea is actually the best choice if you want to get really good.
Obviously, I would agree with that as well. UC Riverside at 2-2, UCLA at 2-2, and UC Berkeley. One team I'm not too familiar with is UCLA with Brian Armoniti, Justin UCLA, Labby, Small Fry, and Hunteroo. Has anybody had a chance to play any of these players at all by chance?
Well, UCLA is a new team, and they're not that great, but they got really lucky in that group because when they played against UC Berkeley, for some reason, UC Berkeley didn't put their best player in the lineup, so then they kind of just lost 3-2 when they should have won even. So that was just UC Berkeley being really cocky, saying like, "Oh, we don't need to have our full lineup against you guys. We're going to win easily," and they ended up getting punished.
Yeah, that's interesting that Padre ended up losing. I'm looking at the match right now. Intuition got a win, the 2v2 lost, and then the fourth place player Houston ended up losing to Justin UCLA. So cool to see that UCLA's back in the mix as well. UC Riverside, fairly familiar with the team. You've got Intense, their coordinator, and on the main roster, a longtime staple of the CSL as a player. Not as familiar with some of the other players, though, on the team. Looks like he's got a bit of a newer crew around him, if I'm looking at some of the usernames. Not typical players, but they did get wins over UCLA and UC Irvine, which is, I think, not as big of a surprise. And having somebody like Intense, they do as well have a sniper for the ace matches, and I think every 3-2 he was able to get that win for them. The only other one is UC Berkeley that's noteworthy, roster that's kind of aged overall. I know for sure Silky's playing. You got Padre, you got Intuition. I don't think they're using any more Udi. I don't think he's on the team officially at the current moment, but I could be mistaken. They have a nice like aged roster. These guys have been around for a few years as well, so watch out for them. They could be maybe a bit of a problem for some of you teams that aren't too familiar with them or haven't faced kind of a veteran squad in the CSL. But overall, fall groups, was there any big surprises that you guys have, or any takeaways that you guys would have over the fall?
Yeah, the worst performance definitely goes to UC Berkeley in the fall. So they got themselves the 3rd seed. Oh, I also want to call out University of Chicago. They were pretty terrible as well. They finished 4th. Yeah. So the problem I saw with U Chicago last term.
You're talking about, well, where would we? It was a close side of it though. It's a 6-8.
Well, they could have gotten second easily.
Yeah.
They should have gotten second easily, but there were some lineup decisions that I saw that were very suboptimal. They were losing like every single 2v2, and that shouldn't really happen with the depth that they have. So that was like the main thing, and then it was just not efficient.
Pancakes, in terms of that, for rotation, do you guys have a pretty active rotation on the roster, would you say? Like, weekly, you guys look at it and, try to fit in different players weekly? Or is it...
I think in the fall, we were trying to figure out what worked best and playing some different players, especially in the 2v2. And then, a lot of those weren't working. We kept losing that. And then in the spring, we settled on a 2v2 team that started to work a lot better for us. And we won all of our 2v2s in the spring. So, and then I think also in the fall we were hurt by some lineup decisions of like, I know like there was one match where we put OMG a Banana, who's our best player, in the fourth game, and then we lost 0-3, which can really hurt the tie-breaking.
Yeah, that was actually really big because you guys lost the tiebreaker in terms of map differential. That's why you placed 4th, and that's why you placed into the group of death.
I find it interesting that again, not to obviously question Chicago's decision making, but that has been a bit of a thing that we've seen over the years. Is teams for some reason put their kind of best player sometimes in the 4 slot in hopes that they will get a win. At least in one of the early matches, and that way they can just go back to back and kind of carry momentum in the later portions of the game. But then you do on occasion see that 0-3, and then all of a sudden that 4 slot doesn't look as good of a decision making. But you guys have a nice deep roster though, as you mentioned, with yourself. You've got Banana, you got Tagged, PSO. I think who else do you guys?
Tagged graduated, but.
Well, he still coaches you guys though, right? Like, is he still?
No, I just put that role on as for fun. He's not there.
Like, I feel like I've seen him on. For some reason,
he still plays with us sometimes, but
yeah, he's the coach. He's the coach. We'll leave it at that.
But yeah,
overall fall results. Do you guys think you guys probably could have done better if you had a little bit more stability and less experimentation?
Yeah, probably so.
Fair enough. All right, let's head over to the spring. For those that are watching, you guys can flip over with us over here into the spring division. We've got 4 conferences once again, a bit of a mix and shuffle based off the seeding and the finishing spots of the fall. Conference 4, we've got RPI sitting at 4-0, UC San Diego 3-1 right behind them, UT Austin at 1-2, UC Irvine at 1-3, and Ontario at 0-3. Now, obviously, for those that are in this episode, and as well for those that are at home, please no spoilers to any matches that might have already been played. We still have a week of broadcasts, part of it being in this group as well, so hang tight. Don't shock the world just yet before we get to them. But RPI finishing 4-0, UT Austin, Sanguine, you're in that group. You guys face them. Are they as strong as they look with Snow, Jon Snow, Training Wheels, all those guys, T-Fang?
Yeah, I think that match was one-sided. They're a very strong team.
A lot of Zergs, 1 Protoss, and a Terran. Really nice balance, but at the end of the day, this is a team that could really fall, has a heavy hitter for an ace match player as well. I looked at their Ontario results. I mean, Jon Snow pretty much getting almost all the ace matches that he can get. Is this a team, though, that could actually go like deep into the season, like get to the finals, or are they crutched by having pretty much like one really good player and that's maybe about it? I don't know if I'm discrediting the roster a bit.
Well, the reason that they're at the top of their group is because of the inefficient training of the other teams. So I think RPI had a really good strategy this season. So they really tried hard on the 2v2. They prepared really hard and they learned all the best 2v2 strategies as Terran Zerg. So they were basically killing everybody in the 2v2s with Ling Hellion all the time. And then the opponents, it just looked like they never actually played 2v2 together. They were just like doing random things all the time, and then it just wasn't working out for the opponents. And I think that's why with their strong 2v2, they were able to top this group. But I think if other teams catch on and they start actually preparing for 2v2 in the playoffs, I think it could be a lot harder for Jon Snow's team to get those victories.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts on RPI and their finishing spot? Nada? All right. Let's head over to Conference 3. We've got Georgia Tech, Washington, Southern Illinois, Michigan State, and UC Riverside. GT top of the ladder right now, 4-0. Washington right behind them at 3-1. Southern Illinois 2-2, 1-3 for MSU, and UCR with an 0-4 right now. Interesting, I would say. Obviously, Georgia Tech does have technically the talent on the team. So does Washington. Is this kind of the reflection of the North group? Was kind of like one of the weaker groups for the spring side of things? Any thoughts?
I don't know. It was an okay group back then, but I think for this, the biggest surprise is that Georgia Tech was able to beat Washington, and that's off the back of a Nidus cheese from their player Plurmorant over Zeal, which was a very surprising result. So I think getting the first seed is very important for a team like Georgia Tech because they don't really have a lot of players outside of Theory that are very strong and very actively playing. But with the first seed, then they have a good chance of winning the first round at least. So that's something that I wouldn't have expected at the beginning of the year. So they've definitely overachieved in my eyes.
Gotcha. Is there any team that you would not want to face out of this group? To Sanguine or Pancakes? Any thoughts on like any of these teams you would want to avoid in playoffs out of this group?
Yeah, I would definitely want to avoid Georgia Tech and Washington.
Would we consider Washington a strong team too as well?
I consider Washington to be the stronger team of the team overall. So I think most teams don't want to face Washington because they're actually a team that has a strong 2v2 squad with Garage Door and Lamb Sauce. So they play Terran Zerg and they pretty much won.
That dude has been playing 2v2 CSL since I was like a caster, like for the CSL back in the day. That is the definition of veteran right there. He's been around for quite a while.
Yeah, and he knows 2v2 because he's been playing 2v2 in the CSL for so long. So, for example, if we were to see University of Washington RPI, there's no way Washington will lose to them. They would stomp the 2v2 really easily and then just win 3-1. So that's a really scary team, and that's a team that a lot of schools are eyeing as somebody they would like to avoid.
All right, we'll move down to Conference 2. This looks like it was a fun group, actually, to be honest. You got UConn, Waterloo, UC Berkeley, Chicago, Florida, and McMaster. Obviously McMaster has dropped out, but everybody else that remained in it, this group was like a party almost. 4-1 for UConn, 4-1 for Waterloo, 3-2 for UC Berkeley, 3-2 for Chicago, and 1-4 for Florida. I guess I'll start off with Pancakes. How has the spring been treating you guys? We'll follow up on that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a really difficult group, and I think we did pretty well. Especially taking a win off Waterloo, which. But I I don't know. I certainly think there were also times when we could have done better. I mean, both of our losses were 2-3, and
Yeah, it looks like the loss to UConn was an ace match to Print F. As mentioned before and over again, that dude is like just scary to play against in games, especially like high pressure games. And then the other one against Silky, which is another really good player as well from the UC Berkeley side. So these weren't like cakewalks of any sort. These were close losses as well, while the wins were actually pretty dominant. Hey, look at that. What happened there? Chicago beat Waterloo? What happened there? Can somebody please explain this to me right now?
Yeah, that was a situation where Waterloo didn't really take their opponent seriously and ended up losing games that they shouldn't have lost.
Well, they put the Riddler into the lineup. Of course, they're not taking it serious.
Well,
I'm kidding.
Well, we put Riddler in, and then he ended up playing Yu-Gi-Oh instead. So that was actually a forfeit match on Riddler's part. But I think he would have lost to Banana anyway, so it was pretty much a legitimate 3-1 loss.
3-1 loss.
Yep.
But yeah, because of that, Chicago now is in the middle of the table, putting in a decent position for seeding as well. Technically, though, at the moment, Waterloo will still finish as the first seed, right? Due to match differential.
Yeah, because they destroyed every single other team other than Chicago.
Yeah, 13-4 by match points on the spring. So technically, they're going to get the first seed. They ended up as well beating UConn. So heads up, they also take the advantage on that one as well. UConn will come in as the 2 seed out of that group with Rookwood, HJX, Printf, and Turkey Dano. I would say, would this group actually, to me personally, it looks like the most quality of teams in terms of like strength of schedule. This would probably be one of the harder groups to play in for the spring, right?
Yeah, it was probably like the hardest group in CSL history, I would say.
And anything that Waterloo in is just like somehow the hardest, like the best, the strongest somehow.
Well, like I strongly feel that even though Chicago and Berkeley both finished 3rd and 4th in the group, they're going to be moving past the round of 16 in the playoffs. They're going to knock down the higher seed, I think, just because the other groups, they don't really have as much talent. And I think the performance of both of those teams, even though they finished 3rd and 4th, it was still quite strong. Like we saw Chicago beating Waterloo, and we saw UC Berkeley pulling out their strongest lineups. Like in the fall, I would criticize them for not always trying their hardest in terms of getting the strongest possible lineups possible, but I saw them trying a lot harder this time around. So I think in the playoffs that'll show.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, I would actually tend to agree with you on that one because, yeah, just Waterloo right now and UConn are 2 quality teams that we're going to end up seeing probably go pretty far in the playoffs. It's just going to be interesting with lineups, maps, and matchups as well. Do we know actually? Have we decided on playoff maps yet?
It's just going to be the current map pool. So
really,
it's fine.
Interesting. Yep. Might have to talk to.
Why is that interesting?
I might have to talk to the long-haired man. I feel like, well, some of these maps, like, unless it's like CSL matches, people have not touched these maps or are not like playing or practicing.
Sir, do you know how long we've had these maps for in the ladder? Do you happen to know?
I mean,
it's been like a month, so I think there's enough time.
You think so? I feel again. How many people? Well, I mean, again, this is again theory talk. How many people do you actually think practice on these like older maps on a general basis compared to just literally ladder grinding and then hopping into a CSL match on one of the old maps?
Wait. Oh, I'm talking. Yeah. So for the playoffs, when I say current map pool, I mean it's going to be the ladder map pool, not
okay. I thought you were just like of course we're gonna pick maps from like the summer of 2017. Like, what are you talking about? Well, we're gonna bring back Fruitland. You know, just like it's gonna be great. Obviously, Pancakes saying, what would you guys prefer? Obviously, the more current map pool than the fall spring edition of it.
Yeah, I mean, the last 2 times I played on Battle of the Boardwalk, which was a pretty weird map. I mean,
that map has always produced goofy games. Like I've yet to see a CSL stream match where that like goofy shit doesn't happen, and then all of a sudden you see like people taking gold bases within like the 3rd minute, just really weird things going on. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's interesting, like strategic possibilities, and like I had that really weird game against Yukon on stream where I was playing against Turkey Dano and he cannon rushed me, and then I like took the gold and like walled the boardwalk in, and then went double robo behind it, but then he went Stargate, and I don't know. I think if I just it was a pretty weird game, but I probably could have won it if I had made a better tech choice, like going Stargate myself.
I feel you. What about you, Sanguine? Thoughts on the map pool changes to the current map pool for playoffs?
I definitely like the current map pool in the ladder right now, but one map I miss is the Odyssey. I really like that map and practice a lot on that map.
Interesting. Did you guys, like, when prepping for matches, do you guys spend a lot of time practicing on the CSL map pool, or were you guys just laddering away on the ladder map pool and then just taking your skills over into the CSL map pool?
We do play a lot of customs on the ladder map, and then we play on the CSL matches.
Gotcha. What about you guys? Pancakes?
I think it depends on if you're doing a map dependent strategy or not. Especially in 2v2, if the opponents are in separated bases or in the same base, that works out a pretty different game. So in that case, it's pretty important to practice on the map you're playing. But I think I don't know. There's also a lot of strategies where the map doesn't matter as much.
So just Chicago kind of picks it up on the fly, sort of. It goes you guys just see where you need to train and where you might can avoid it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the 2v2 especially, we train more on the map specifically, and it's just harder to get 2v2 practice outside of specific training for it.
I feel you. Yeah, it's definitely 2v2 has always been an interesting matchup in SC2 in the way you have to prep and play for it as well. This year, by the way, actually, I wanted to get your guys' opinion on it. How do you guys feel about the change from not allowing same races in 2v2 to having the same races in 2v2 allowed? Do you guys think that's changed the dynamic of the matchups up for 2v2 as well? So mass Protoss death balls of air.
I guess
just two sets of golden armadas heading your way. You're just we're just gonna tap out.
I mean, we've been pretty successful with double Zerg. I think double racing can have some kind of, I don't know. It has some sort of or can have some sort of sharp kind of timings and strategies. I think I don't know. I kind of think that if you're really well prepared for it, that it's maybe not quite as sound because you don't have two sets of units that you can choose to complement each other, especially as it gets into the later game, your army kind of suffers from the same weakness as it does in 1v1. But like I said, there's also a lot of timing attacks with double races that can be pretty difficult to hold.
Gotcha.
So, I don't know.
Sanguine, any thoughts on that? On the 2v2 changes for this year?
For our team, we're definitely glad that there is no double racing anymore because our team doesn't have Protoss, and it's either it's 2 Terrans and 2 Zergs. So we had Terran and Zerg in the 2v2 every single time. And it was really tough to face against teams that send Zerg and Zerg as 2v2. So a lot of the 2v2 matches, we just straight up lost in the early game.
Actually, we changed the rules the other way. So before that wasn't allowed, and now it is.
Yeah, so, I think that's what he meant. Yeah, basically.
The
Zerg
is allowed.
Yeah, it's allowed. You guys yourselves played double Zerg the last match, but okay, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Watch out, UT Austin just got an advantage. we can do this.
Oh gosh. Okay, then it's an advantage that we didn't.
No, I think it's good. I mean, it's kind of like one of those like nice quality of lifestyle changes, especially for rosters. It's like last year we brought down the playoff roster from needing 5 or 6 players to back down to 4. So people or in teams that didn't have like big rosters wouldn't get punished during playoff time. And this is another one of those changes. I think that was really nice where you didn't have to strain out your race pool for your player selection. This way, you're allowed to, just utilize the players that you have without having to change or kind of gimmick or make people go out of their comfort zone to play a different race and stuff like that. So it's quality of lifestyle change. I liked it. We do have one final group though that we didn't get to in the spring really quick, and that is going to be conference number 1: Temple, Illinois, Simon Fraser, UCLA, and the dropped out corpse of RIT. Temple 4-0, probably no shock. I don't know, is this a group that we should like really deeply go into? Because UCLA, as you mentioned, a little bit of a new team, underperforming. You have Simon Fraser, who's doing okay and kind of building up their brand and their team. And then you have Illinois finishing at 3-1. They've got Frost, Krillmon. We just actually watched them the other night play, and they looked decent. But again, they were playing against Simon Fraser as well. So when they played against Temple, they got 1-3'd, and I think that's kind of more of the focal match to look at, where when they matched up, they just didn't do too well heads up against a top team. So is Illinois eventually going to be like a potential threat or heavy hitter that we'll have to watch out for, or are they just going to be one of those teams that is going to be a round of 8 type of exit for them, do we think?
They might have a chance to get to the round of 8, and then after that, the teams will just get too strong, and they probably won't. I would be surprised if they got past the round of 8, but I think finishing in the round of 8 for them, I think I would be happy if I was them.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts on Illinois? Because I feel like Temple's like really spoken for. Like obviously they're one of the top teams. Like watch out for them.
I mean, we lost Illinois in the fall, but I definitely think we could have beaten them with a little bit more preparation and better lineup choice. And like as a third seed, we'll be going up against the second seed in the first round, and I think that Illinois probably seems like the least scary of the second seeds. So I guess I would be kind of hoping to get them.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, the second seeds currently, you have UC San Diego, you have Washington, UConn, and Illinois. So, yeah, I think you're completely correct on that, as the team that you would want to face would probably be that team. The question is, exactly how will the groups get drawn? That'll be very curious to watch and see what happens. Are there any big takeaways or surprises from the spring before we move on to our final topic?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is RPI taking advantage, not knowing how to play the team. Like they tried really hard and they went for it with like a win in every single 2v2. So good for them. So they're in a good position. Georgia Tech's in a good position because they cheesed out a better player against Washington. So that's pretty good for them.
I like how you just like praised them. You're just like great job cheesing them. Like great job. Yeah. But use that dinosaur.
So yeah, I think the bracket will look pretty good once the long hair guy gets going.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun 16-team group. I'm actually really excited to watch and see kind of what happens here going on the rest of the season. Obviously, are like Sanguine Pancakes, are you guys going to use that pre-playoff break to like focus on school or practice, or what are you guys going to do before playoff time?
I'm probably going to just ladder or play team games.
What about you, Pancakes?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably ladder some too, and also probably maybe focus on school a little bit, and also there's the TESPA tournament that's starting up, and
true.
Chicago's playing in that too. So,
well, I am going to be wishing you guys a good playoff run to both of you, but we got one last topic to look at tonight, and that is just general thoughts and maybe even prayers on the SC2 balance side. At the current moment, at least in my opinion, I want to say that Protoss is back in action. It's that time of year. Protoss is back in action. Terrans are complaining, and Zergs feel like they're completely dead as a race right now. So, what are your guys' current thoughts on how the metagame is going, and thoughts on race strength and units?
Well, when I first saw Pancakes last fall, he was like low master. He was like 4,700, 4,800. And then when the Protoss patch hit, he became Grandmaster. So that's all. That's about it. You know.
Yeah, I certainly think Protoss got a lot stronger in the patch. But like, I don't know. I also think the patch sort of the ways in which it changed Protoss suited my style a lot. Like, I don't think I was hurt as much by the loss of the mothership core. I think like some people had some trouble dealing with Zerg aggression, or like I guess ling drops are kind of pretty common right now, and I don't feel I don't know. I guess I don't feel like I miss the mothership core as much, and I'm glad to have like I'm glad to have the new Chrono and the stronger stalkers. And,
I feel like Protoss have also kind of figured out how to deal with like mid game. Well, one, doing a better job of dealing with drops now that they don't have to rely on the mothership core. They're actually a lot more attentive. Just generally, that's made I feel like Protoss players better. They've learned to deal with kind of the early mid game tank push timings. Those have gotten better as well in terms of how to dealing with them, and then as well knowing how to engage versus full 200 armies, especially against like Terran and like Liberator fields, and as well what to watch out for versus like late game Zerg comps between like Vipers and Festers, all of that stuff as well. Because every Protoss that I've faced like recently, I'm a Terran player as like a main, so when I engage like against Protoss players, I feel like they're a lot more confident and calculated with how they're going to deal with the Liberator fields. It's not anymore like the typical originally when you saw just like them trying to brute force through Liberator fields, and then they just start losing units like peppered in through the back, like as they get through the Terran army, and so by the time they got through, they would get shredded. So I don't know. What are your thoughts right now, just generally? Like, do you feel like you have a better, like the race has like a better grasp of like matchups now versus to what it was?
Yeah, I guess the other big change that I think helped Protoss a lot was the Widow Mines being revealed after they fire, just not having to get detection quite as early, like just allows you to spend those resources on other things that are but as for Liberators, like I don't know, like I think they can still be quite annoying to deal with sometimes, I guess.
Hella annoying. Hella annoying. Especially when they get their range. Hella annoying units. Oh my god. Overall, like, what do we think of Protoss right now? Is it a race that needs to get, obviously, like, is it a race that needs to get nerfed or punished in any way? Or is this just a time frame where Terran and Zerg players need a little bit more time to figure out the matchups and how to deal with, like, timing and pushes, rather than just kind of knee-jerking at Protoss? And their strength.
I guess it's like I think specifically in TVP, like I feel like Terran could maybe use a little bit better ways to punish a fast third from Protoss. Like especially kind of like I don't know, like ways that are like kind of frontal attack focused, because like they've kind of been harassment focused for a while now, and I think that's part of maybe because they don't have as many great options kind of for those attacks. So maybe that's just because the Protoss, Stalkers are now really good early, and just the legacy of the Void economy has made it kind of easier to get units up quickly. But I don't know.
Sanguine, any thoughts on the home race? Sanguine! Did we lose a man? Or did I miss
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, the TVP is just a complete mess. It needs a lot of work with the patch. So So what you have in GSL right now is Terran has to punish Protoss taking the fast third, and they do that. They used to do that just by doing that 1-1-1 Marine mine drop, but Protoss has gotten so used to that, and Stalkers are pretty good now. So that ends up being bad for Terran because Protoss just kills a drop, and then mines just reveal after they fire a shot. So what they do is they do Hellions openings, and then if Protoss just walls or defends it easily, then Terran ends up with a 2 base economy, while Protoss can just easily take the third Nexus and start taking 2 like Colossus or High Templar, and then Terran is forced into a position where they have to deal damage, or they're gonna have a very, very difficult late game, as hard as it already is.
Is this healthy though for Terrans though? Because Terrans like over past 4 years, 5 years have been utilizing almost the same strategy over and over again to try to punish Protoss players. I feel like we're also seeing interesting innovation where mech is actually becoming slightly a viable option now versus Protoss as well. I mean, again, I don't want to just like piggyback off the GSL Gumiho game this past week, but it seems like Terrans are now actually experimenting more than just your typical, mine drop or just tank push, or something that you usually see from Terrans that we've seen over the past however many years. Could this be maybe a bit of a healthy thing for Terrans? Kind of like how Protoss have to learn to play without the mothership core. Terrans have to figure out how to harass and position themselves as well.
I guess for Terrans who have been playing mech, it's good, but I'm not sure if Terrans that are used to playing bio like me, having trouble having to learn how to play mech, and it's just a lot of people like playing bio, and I think the patch has kind of forced us to play in a specific style of mech that works. So that's just one of the things. I don't know, but it's just really hard to play 200 versus 200 fights in the late game as bio. So
just like me, I throw down Liberator Fields and hope to dear God I hit enough EMPs on Ghost before they just start blowing through me and storming me down. Blink Stalkers just blink to the side just to catch all the Liberators. Everything else just falls through.
So I play. I off race at Protoss also, and I play versus Masters Terran friends. And one of the things that Protoss can do in a late game is, when Terran sets down all those like mass liberator zones, all they have to do is just go around and kill something, and then just recall back. So in late game, feels like Protoss is a lot more mobile than Terrans, and they can just send Warp Prism to the main and just warp a whole bunch of Charge Dust and Zealots, Charge Dust and DTs to kill the production, and that forces Terrans to just attack into the Protoss. A lot of these like checkmate moves that Terrans don't get to have in the late game, it seems to be a little off balance, in my opinion.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, the biggest difference is not the mothership core removal, but the Widow Mine nerf. So this means that Protosses aren't feeling pressure to get an early robo anymore. They're just going for fast Twilight Council, fast blink, fast charge. They're getting that double forge up. And then when they get Widow Mine dropped, now all they have to do is bring some Stalkers and then use Blink to avoid the shots and then just shoot them down for free. So as long as the Protoss doesn't mess up really badly in the mid game, they're usually going to be ahead just by deflecting that pressure. And this makes it so that Protosses have a wide range of builds that they can do now. So they're no longer pigeonholed into a specific strategy of going a fast robo. They can say, oh, I'm going to go Stargate, I'm going to go fast Twilight instead. So they have a lot more freedom now. And as for Terran we don't feel that we have that sort of freedom anymore. We feel that every game kind of just looks the same when you're playing against a person who knows how to deflect harassment easily. And I think Blizzard has tried their best to try to rebalance it. There's been like 3 balance patches that have favored Terran so far, but overall, I don't think
the
they're
most recent one, the Raven change.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
any viability in that now that it's like, I think it's automatic damage, right? From the Raven Seeker missile.
Well, they
yeah,
brought
I think
back auto turret.
the auto turret isn't that huge, but I think that instant seeker is pretty useful. I'm not sure why pro players aren't using it that much, even with bio composition, but that seeker missile, it's instant, so it's really hard to dodge it, and that -3 armor, I think that's really useful in the late game.
Yes, the Raven is definitely a very favorable change for players such as the Riddler, I would say. But yeah, I'm just sad that they did not try to address the Widowmine. Instead of they tried to make other changes that they feel would help Terran, but it wouldn't really help as much as just changing the Widowmine back. So I think they're trying, but they're not doing the correct thing. Another matchup that's really balanced these days is Protoss versus Zerg, because with the removal of the Mothership Core, you notice that against Terran, it's not that big of a deal because they can just use Stalkers to defend everything, no problem. It doesn't really matter. But against Zerg, they can go for the early Overlord drops because of the Evolution Chamber tech requirement rather than Lair. So I think that really forces Protoss to play Stargate every single time, which is kind of the opposite as Protoss versus Terran. Against Terran, Protoss can go any tech path they want. They can go for Disruptors, they can go for Phoenixes, they can go for fast Twilight upgrades, they can go for DTs, they can do whatever they want.
Well, they can look at it as well. I feel like for ZVP, it's like either you try to quickly punish Protoss, or you're in it, or you're going to be in it for the long haul. And when you're in it for the long haul, you're going to be dealing with, Sentry Stalker Immortal pushes. You got the parting train coming down your way, which is kind of making a bit of a resurgence, or you're dealing with late game Colossus tech to be able to try to scorch the earth down with for all the Hydras and typically Roaches that you see. Mutas as a unit, I feel like we don't see them anymore. Am I wrong in saying that?
We're starting to see them more in ZVT because of the Hydra nerf. Overall, a lot less than Heart of the Swarm, for sure.
Generally, for ZVT as well, is that right now currently possibly the better or best matchup that we have right now in the game, like as like balance wise? Both races I feel like can almost deal with everything the other one brings. Maybe Mech is a bit strong on the side of ZV on TVZ, but overall I feel like that's once again generally one of the better matchups that we see in SC2, right?
Well, in terms of TVZ, at least in the pro scene, they're saying that bio isn't viable anymore. So a lot of the players like TY and Kumiho are going mech. So in the recent GSL round of 8, they had like mass liberators and mass and just split the map in half and fight their way in the late game. And I think if you go bio, then I think it's very favorable for Zerg, because Hydras are pretty strong against like anything if they have a Vipers to use Blinding Clouds. So I think it's definitely a lot easier to defend and just rush Hive and get Ultras out, and they get way ahead than Terran. I think there's some balance issue as
Interesting.
in TVZ.
Powerful. Any thoughts on ZVT as well, or TVZ, whichever way you want to head it?
Well, I've watched Innovation play late game with a Mass Ghost style, and it actually looks pretty good. So I would say that if you're a Korean Terran at this time, you're feeling pretty okay playing against Zerg. Like you'd much rather play against a Zerg than a Protoss, sure. So I think from that perspective, it's very favorable for Terran.
I just feel like races can deal. Both races can deal with each other in a better way compared to the other matchups that we see. It's less just completely tilting towards like one end or one side or one quick battle. It's a lot more engagement heavy and kind of can hold a game length that has kind of a beginning, middle, and end as well, where it's not over either at the start or just one big blowout battle at the end.
Well, if you have a Terran player like Innovation, control a lot of ghosts at the same time and be really efficient, then I can see how it's really hard for Zerg. But if you're looking at the average North American ladder, then nobody knows how to play ghosts. Everyone's just going to die to Ultralisks. So it's pretty imbalanced.
We just play mech. We just play mech and NA.
Yeah, or you can play mech and then start losing to like Losira. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like and it's just like, you know what, we're gonna tilt the scales. Like, we can't compete with Koreans, but we got mech. Like, let's try mech. Let's see what happens. But yeah, it's funny. Since we're kind of a little bit low on time, I want to try to close this out really quick. Mirror matchups. Pick one mirror matchup that you like and why.
PvP.
But why?
I think Terran versus Terran can get really long, and the meta is to play mech right now, which is very bad for viewers. For ZVZ, you might have a lot of short games with somebody randomly making a lot of lings and then just running them across the map and just winning. Like, if you saw the BlizzCon finals, like 2 out of the 6 games ended like that, where the guy just randomly made one. So I think that's just not very enjoyable. Whereas for PvP,
I mean, do you see a lot of times with like TBT with like, again, this is something I encounter. I feel like it's whoever has like enough tanks and like enough air where they position well, and then they just like push you out of position with Liberators and Vikings or something along those lines.
Yeah, so even if you have a great army like that, it's still going to take you forever to win. So that's why I don't like it.
PvP does seem a bit more dynamic. All right, Pancakes, what are your thoughts as a resident TOS player?
I don't know. Like, I guess a lot of times PvP, like especially to get to the late game, can just be about like who can make more Archons and then like get a better arc. I mean, there's also strategies like Sky Toss, I guess, that like people can go for.
Is that really a strategy though? Is that like Sky Toss is just like, we're just gonna build a lot of like FU units and like try to break these FU units, just like. Yeah. Because there's that tipping point where it's just like, unless you have like enough units to almost match the other person's units in the air, they're just going to overwhelm you, right? Like, there's almost like a point of no coming back.
Yeah. Well, especially Stalkers aren't really that like... Stalkers like aren't very good in ground versus ground like fights, because like they just get countered by Immortals and Charge Lots and all that. So like, I mean, if you're going for a ground army, like... your anti-air is mostly going to consist of Archons and maybe Storm, and like it can be really hard to deal with mass air, and like
do we need Vortex to come back? We got the base mothership now. Do we need Vortex to come back? Is that what we need?
I mean that's just going to help the person that's, well, I don't know. It's like harder to get a mothership if you're not going air. So like, I feel like that would maybe help the air person more. Like, I don't really know. Like, I don't really know how you would fix that problem though without like messing up the other matchups. Like, it's like
true. It's true. I'm just thinking like on a PvP basis, I would just love to see just like a whole air army get toileted into Archons and then just pop out and it's like, well, congrats, all your interceptors just die like this, and all your air is completely naked unless you got like Void Rays backing them up. So I find that interesting. Sanguine, let's get over to you. What is your favorite mirror matchup in your opinion right now? You're L-muted again. Come on, Sanguine. We lost our man. The man with the plan. If he wants to jump in here in a sec, we'll let him. But generally, yeah, I feel like PvP is like a lot more dynamic. You see a lot more versatile styles. You see various builds too as well. Very interesting to watch to see as well how Protoss players in PvP utilize like shield batteries in defensive and aggressive positioning as well, Because I mean, you look at somebody like Print F, and that dude like absolutely knows how to abuse the hell out of shield batteries and get the most out of them to try to push somebody's high ground down. I've never, I don't see stuff like this from almost any other player on a general basis, and that's just PvP. When he gets into PvT and PvZ, he can do things as well fairly similar, and it really scary as well. So, Sanguine, one last sound check. Are you with us?
Yes.
Are with us. What is your favorite mirror matchup right now?
I would say TVT. I don't know. When I play PvP, I just lose diamond plats. Also, I just don't know the matchup. I think ZVZ is just mostly just Lingbane Wars. So I have the most knowledge in TVT.
Lingbane Wars into Roach Wars into Roach Ravager Wars into Roach Ravager Hydra Wars into Roach Ravager Hydra Lurker. It's just like the same like path that you see almost every game.
Yeah. So I think PvP is probably the most dynamic, but for me, still TVT I like the most.
That's interesting. I feel like not a lot of people would actually take that stance, even as a Terran player. I don't take that stance currently, but glad to see that some people still love TVT. My love for TVT, the only time it like really truly came was during the Wings of Liberty days and a little bit of the Hardest Swarm days, when it was just like pretty much no like Liberator, no Widowmine. It was like just straight Marine tank wars. Like those were some of my like best and fondest memories. Because you would have just these obnoxious and absurd like hour-long games that were like really fun, really tactical, position-based as well. So it was really cool to remember back in those days. I don't think we're there in TVT. It's a lot more laid out, and there's just some really gimmicky and very strong units on the TVT side for the matchup, depending on what and how you use them. But all right, guys, let's close things out. It's been a really fun episode of the Quad. I really appreciate you guys hopping on and making this a thing, as well as also some of our awesome viewers that we've seen put their input on balance as well. I see you there, Riddler, Turkey Dano. And for all you guys at Buster as well that have come on by, appreciate it for the live show. If you guys want to check out the VOD, you guys can always check it out on youtube.com/CStarLeague. We will upload that after we get done. But before we head out, final words from all of our guests. Pancakes, let's start with you. Any shout-outs? Any final words? Any inspirational words for Chicago?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I mean, I hope we do well in the playoffs, and I don't know. I hope everyone has a fun time in the season.
I like that. Not going for blood. Not going for blood. Just like I hope everybody has fun. I like that. It's like really wholesome. We don't hear that enough in SC2. Sanguine, what about you? Any final words? Any shout outs?
It's been fun talking to other CSL players and admins about the game and the league. Our team honestly doesn't do a lot of practices, but I think once we start being a little bit more cooperative, maybe we'll perform well.
Mm-hmm. Powerful, what about you?
Yeah, shout out to everyone at Waterloo. Shout out to Waterloo A. Waterloo, our guys. Waterloo A will be facing both Chicago and UT Austin tomorrow for the TESPA match. Mm-hmm. So have fun with that, guys. Shout out to Avillo, who has inspired Terrans all across Waterloo with his amazing play, and his strategies have really helped us become one of the top teams in CSL. Shout out to Combat X, who is currently teaching a first-year computer science course at the University of Waterloo.
I think still banned by the CSL as well.
Still banned by CSL. Still banned from Team Liquid. Well, as CSL admin, I will hereby unban Combat X. He may now play.
And the long-haired guy and myself will overrule that too as well. But yeah, cool stuff. Obviously, guys, if you want to follow everybody on Twitter, you literally can't unless you want Powerful, who I think you just created an account, right? Like, is that like brand new?
Yeah, I just made it. Nobody took my name because I'm not famous. So it's all good.
Time to make you famous enough. So if you guys want to follow Powerfo and bug him about SC2 and adminning stuff, you guys can hit him up at Powerfo. You guys can obviously follow me to check out what's going on always in the CSL world. Some of the more important posts I usually try to bring up. Our boys from Chicago and UT Austin do not have Twitters as far as I know, but you can keep track of them on the CSL website at cstarleague.com. Once the playoff brackets are out in about, I would say, a week or so. About a week, yeah. Probably it won't take longer than a week. You guys can check out who's going to be matched up against who, and then after that we will schedule the broadcast for that as well. So that's going to be a really fun time of year. I'm always excited every time we get to see some SC2 playoffs and some of our teams. If you guys haven't yet, feel free to follow us on Twitter at CStarLeague and at Collegiate SC2. For our following week, next week, we have another quad coming up. We have another Ward Up episode. I think we'll be actually showing Smash Course tomorrow as well before our League of Legends matches. And obviously, if you're a fan of Varsity League, the final week's matches are going to be played tomorrow. Almost, I think, all 6-0 teams are going to be playing over the weekend. So all your heavy hitters out of the Swiss format have shown up. And so thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you to our guests again. And we will see you next week for another episode of the quad. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.